For 300 million years, life was confined to the oceans, a vibrant but watery kingdom. The first pioneers to crawl ashore were amphibians, brave explorers chained to their aquatic past. Every new generation was a retreat, a return to the water, to lay their vulnerable gelatinous eggs which would dry out and perish on land. This single biological constraint held back a world of possibilities. It was a planetary conquest, stalled at the water's edge. But evolution is the ultimate innovator. In the quiet, humid undergrowth of the Carboniferous forests, a biological miracle was taking shape. A self-contained, portable ocean, a fortress of life, complete with its own food supply and waste disposal system. This was the amniotic egg, the unbreakable arc that would sever the final tie to the water and launch the age of terrestrial vertebrates, paving the way for the reptiles, the dinosaurs, and ultimately, ourselves. 4 billion years ago, our world was a world of water. Under a faint young sun, vast, sterile oceans churned, holding the chemical secrets of existence. It was here, in this planetary crucible, that the first spark of life ignited. For eons, this watery cradle was the only home life knew. It was a realm of both profound safety and relentless peril. The water provided buoyancy, preventing delicate, unstructured bodies from collapsing under their own weight. It was a universal solvent carrying the dissolved nutrients that fueled the engine of early metabolism. Above all, it was the medium for creation itself. Reproduction was a simple, if profoundly wasteful act of broadcast. Males and females would release their genetic material into the currents, hoping that by sheer chance, sperm and egg would meet. The resulting embryos, little more than gelatinous specks, were on their own from the moment of conception. They drifted on the currents, part of the planktonic soup, consumed in the billions by filter feeders and primitive predators. For those that survived, the water was their nursery. It provided the oxygen that diffused across their fragile membranes and washed away the toxic byproducts of their growth. This was the great paradox of the primordial sea. It was both the giver of life and its most indiscriminate taker. The strategy was one of numbers, an astronomical gamble where countless failures were required to produce a single success. For hundreds of millions of years, this was the only way. Life diversified into a bewildering array of forms, from armored trilobites to monstrous sea scorpions. Great reefs grew, and the first vertebrates, the fish, began to dominate the depths. But all of them, from the smallest shrimp to the largest placoderm, were bound by the same reproductive law. They were prisoners of the cradle. Their entire existence was circumscribed by the reach of the tide. Beyond the shoreline lay another world, a vast, empty, and silent expanse of rock and dust. The continents were a barren frontier, an incredible opportunity awaiting any form of life that could solve a seemingly impossible puzzle: how to take the ocean with you. By the Devonian period, some 375 million years ago, a revolution was underway. The continents were no longer barren. Simple plants had begun their slow conquest, greening the landscape and, crucially, pumping oxygen into the atmosphere. This new world, rich with opportunity and free from aquatic predators, beckoned. And one group of animals heard the call. They were lobe-finned fish, creatures who possessed a remarkable anatomical gift. Their fins contained the same bone structure that would one day become arms and legs. Over generations, driven by the pressures of competition and the lure of untapped resources, these pioneers began to push the boundaries of their existence. They evolved the ability to gulp air, their swim bladders transforming into primitive lungs, their fins strengthened, becoming sturdy limbs capable of propelling them across mudflats. These were the first amphibians, creatures of two worlds. They were a triumph of evolution, the first vertebrates to walk upon the earth. On land, they were explorers in a new frontier. They found a world teeming with invertebrate prey and few rivals. They could bask in the sun, breathe the air, and survey a domain their aquatic ancestors could never have imagined. Yet, for all their terrestrial adaptations, they were bound by an invisible leash, a biological chain that always pulled them back to their ancestral home. That chain was reproduction. They had conquered the land for themselves, but they could not grant it to their children. To create the next generation, they had to return to the water. Their eggs were still the eggs of a fish, soft, shellless, and utterly dependent on a constant aquatic bath to survive. Every breeding season, these terrestrial adventurers were forced to undertake a perilous pilgrimage back to the swamps and ponds of their birth. This was the amphibians' dilemma. They had one foot in the future, but the other remained firmly planted in the past. They were living proof that leaving the water was one thing, but leaving it behind entirely was another challenge altogether. Life on land was a part-time affair, a temporary excursion before the fundamental needs of biology called them home. To truly conquer the continents, this final binding chain to the water had to be broken. To understand the amphibians' great dilemma, we must look closer at the source of the problem, the egg itself. In the nurturing sanctuary of a pond, it is a marvel of simplicity, a translucent sphere of jelly cradling a tiny, developing embryo within. It is porous, allowing life-giving oxygen from the water to diffuse inward while letting toxic waste products like ammonia diffuse out. The surrounding water prevents it from drying out and provides some measure of support. It is a design perfected over 500 million years of aquatic life. But take this delicate creation out of the water, and its perfection instantly becomes a fatal flaw. On dry land, this marvel of aquatic engineering becomes a prison of jelly. The first enemy is the air itself. The same porous membrane that allows for gas exchange in water becomes a sieve in the atmosphere, and the egg's precious moisture rapidly evaporates. Within minutes, it begins to shrivel, its internal chemistry breaking down. The developing embryo, which is mostly water, desiccates and perishes. The second enemy is gravity. Without the buoyant support of water, the gelatinous structure collapses under its own weight, crushing the delicate network of cells inside. And finally, there is the problem of waste. In a pond, the embryo's metabolic byproducts are washed away. On land, these toxins would accumulate within the egg, poisoning the very life it was meant to sustain. This simple, gelatinous egg was the biological barrier standing between life and the full colonization of the planet. It was perfectly adapted for one world and completely unsuited for another. It offered no real physical protection from predators, no defense against the sun's radiation, and no way to manage the fundamental life processes of breathing, eating, and excreting in a dry environment. It was a biological dead end for any creature dreaming of a truly terrestrial existence. For life to advance, it didn't just need stronger legs or more efficient lungs. It needed an entirely new kind of beginning. It needed a way to solve the problems of hydration, gas exchange, waste management, and physical support, all within a single portable package. The challenge was immense. How do you build a fortress that can withstand the harshness of the land, yet remains a gentle, life-sustaining nursery on the inside? The Carboniferous period. The world is a vast, humid greenhouse. For 60 million years, conditions are perfect for the amphibian way of life. Immense swamp forests, choked with giant ferns and scale trees, cover much of the globe. Dragonflies with the wingspan of eagles patrol the skies, and amphibians, some the size of crocodiles, are the undisputed rulers of the land. They thrive in this endless, interconnected world of water and wetland. It seems as though their dual existence is a resounding success. But evolution never stands still. The planet itself is restless. As the Carboniferous gave way to the Permian, the supercontinent of Pangaea began to form. This colossal landmass had a profound effect on the global climate. The vast, swampy coastlines began to shrink, and huge continental interiors became increasingly arid and seasonal. The world of the amphibians, their endless network of ponds and marshes, started to dry up. For the first time, their dependence on water became a critical vulnerability. A seasonal drought could wipe out an entire generation's brood. The journey to a suitable body of water became longer and more hazardous. The safe, watery nurseries became fewer and more crowded, leading to intense competition and predation. This environmental pressure created a powerful evolutionary incentive to solve the reproductive problem once and for all. The animals that could lay their eggs away from the water's edge would gain a monumental advantage. They could escape the crowded, predator-filled nurseries. They could move inland, exploiting new food sources and colonizing vast, arid territories that were completely inaccessible to their amphibious cousins. This was the great prize waiting for whichever lineage could break the final chain to the sea. Among the diverse creatures of the time were small, agile animals that were beginning to diverge from the main amphibian line. They were the earliest reptiles. Outwardly, they may have looked similar to their amphibious relatives, but inwardly, a biological revolution was brewing. They were on the cusp of developing the single greatest innovation in the history of vertebrate life. The stage was set for a dramatic shift in the balance of power. The reign of the amphibians was tied to the swamps, and the swamps were disappearing. A new kind of animal equipped with a new kind of egg was about to inherit the earth. The solution, when it arrived, was not merely an improvement. It was a masterpiece of biological engineering, a technology so profound it would change the course of evolution forever. It was the amniotic egg. This was more than just a shell. It was a complete, self-contained life support system for a developing embryo. It was a private ocean, a portable ark that allowed the first true reptiles to finally sever the reproductive chain to the water. Inside its protective, semi-permeable shell, a series of remarkable membranes solved every problem that had plagued the amphibian egg on land. The first, and most crucial, was the amnion. This membrane formed a fluid-filled sac that directly surrounded the embryo, recreating the watery cradle of its distant ancestors. This internal sea cushioned the embryo from shocks and, most importantly, prevented it from drying out. Life had not abandoned the water, it had simply learned how to package it and take it along. To fuel a longer development period inside this fortress, the egg contained a large, nutrient-rich yolk sac, a personal pantry for the growing embryo. A third membrane, the allantois, served as a dedicated waste receptacle. It collected the embryo's toxic byproducts, keeping them safely sequestered away from the delicate developing tissues. Finally, a fourth membrane, the chorion, surrounded everything else. Working in concert with the allantois, it managed the vital process of gas exchange, allowing oxygen to enter through the porous shell and carbon dioxide to exit. This intricate four-membrane system was the key. It was a declaration of independence from the aquatic world. For the first time, vertebrates could reproduce anywhere on dry land. A female reptile could now deposit her clutch of durable, self-sufficient eggs in a sandy hollow under a log or far into the arid interior of the new supercontinent and simply walk away. The eggs contained everything the next generation needed to survive. This breakthrough unleashed the full potential of terrestrial life. The reptiles, freed from the amphibians' dilemma, exploded in a wave of diversification. They spread across Pangaea, adapting to fill niches from pole to pole. This single invention paved the way for the age of dinosaurs, and later for the evolution of birds and even mammals, whose ancestors were also early amniotes. The unbreakable ark had been forged, and aboard it, life set sail to conquer the land. For millions of years, the land was a frontier of promise and peril. Amphibians, the first vertebrates to brave the air, lived a life tethered to their aquatic origins. They could hunt and explore on solid ground, but an invisible chain always pulled them back to the water. Their jelly-like eggs and gilled larvae were defenseless against the dry air, confining them to the damp margins of the world. But deep in the Carboniferous period, some 312 million years ago, a biological revolution was quietly unfolding. Within the bodies of small, unassuming, lizard-like creatures, evolution was drafting a declaration of independence from the water. The result was a masterpiece of biological engineering. The amniotic egg. This was not merely a new type of egg, it was a self-contained world, a private pond that an animal could carry with it anywhere. It was the key that would unlock the continents. Inside this revolutionary vessel, a series of specialized membranes worked in concert. The most critical was the amnion, a fluid-filled sac that surrounded the developing embryo, protecting it from physical shocks, and, most importantly, preventing it from drying out. It replicated the watery cradle of a pond, but made it portable. Alongside it, the yolk sac served as a nutrient-rich pantry, providing all the energy needed for development. Another membrane, the allantois, acted as a storage space for waste products and aided in respiration. Finally, the entire system was encased by the chorion, which managed the exchange of gases with the outside world. This complete life support system meant that for the first time, a vertebrate embryo could develop entirely on land. The evolutionary pressure for such an invention was immense. The terrestrial world offered a buffet of insects and plant life, and fewer large predators than the teeming waters. To the creatures that could break the reproductive chain to the water, a vast and open world awaited. These first amniotes were not giants, they were pioneers. They scurried through the coal forests, laying their precious, leathery-shelled eggs in dry, hidden places, safe from aquatic hunters. Each egg was an ark, carrying the next generation into a future where the oceans and rivers were no longer a necessity, but a choice. The revolution had begun, and the world would never be the same. The amniotic egg was more than just a waterproof container. It was a sophisticated blueprint for a new way of life. Its intricate design solved multiple biological challenges at once, providing a platform for unprecedented evolutionary success. By liberating reproduction from water, it fundamentally altered the life cycle of terrestrial vertebrates. Amphibians were forced into a two-stage life. a vulnerable aquatic larval phase followed by a terrestrial adult stage. The amniotic egg eliminated this precarious transition. The embryo could now undergo its entire development within the protected confines of the egg, hatching as a miniature, air-breathing version of the adult. This direct development was a game changer. It allowed newborns to be larger, more robust, and better equipped to survive from the moment they emerged. They did not need to undergo a risky metamorphosis in predator-filled waters. The design itself is a marvel of efficiency. The yolk sac is the engine room, a dense package of lipids and proteins fueling the complex construction of a new body. The allantois is the sanitation and ventilation system, sequestering toxic metabolic waste like uric acid and working with the chorion to facilitate a constant, life-sustaining flow of oxygen in and carbon dioxide out. The amnion is the ultimate shock absorber, a private ocean that cushions the delicate embryo against the bumps and jolts of the outside world. This elegant multi-part system allowed for a longer gestation period within the egg. This extended development time enabled the evolution of more complex body plans and larger brains. The hatchling that broke free from an amniotic egg was not a helpless larva, but a capable survivor. This blueprint for survival was also a blueprint for conquest. With this portable nursery, amniotes were no longer restricted to coastal plains or riverbanks. They could now push inland, exploring habitats that were completely inaccessible to their amphibian relatives. They could colonize dry plains, climb mountains, and even venture into arid deserts. The egg was their passport to the entire planet. Every new environment they entered spurred new adaptations, leading to an explosion of diversity. The fundamental design was so successful, so versatile, that it became the foundation for all subsequent terrestrial vertebrate life. It was a single invention that redrew the map of life on Earth, paving the way for the titans that would soon inherit the world. The earliest amniotic eggs were a huge leap forward, but they were still vulnerable. Their coverings were likely soft and leathery, similar to those of many modern lizards and turtles. While they prevented water loss, they offered limited physical protection and could still be damaged or punctured. To truly conquer the land, the ark needed armor. The solution was a remarkable feat of biomineralization, the hard shell. This innovation transformed the egg from a delicate pouch into a private fortress. The primary building material was calcium carbonate, a compound readily available in the environment and already used by many organisms for shells and skeletons. Animals evolved the ability to extract calcium from their food and bloodstream and deposit it as a network of interlocking crystals around the egg. This process created a rigid, durable structure that offered a new level of security. The hard shell was a defense against two major threats. First, it was a formidable barrier against small predators and scavengers. A tough, calcified exterior was much harder to bite through or tear open than a soft, leathery one. Second, it provided enhanced protection against the elements. It was a superior shield against desiccation in arid environments and offered greater structural integrity, allowing eggs to be laid in more exposed locations without being crushed. But this fortress came with a challenge. A solid, impermeable wall would suffocate the embryo inside. Life needs to breathe. The solution was as elegant as the shell itself. The evolution of microscopic pores. Thousands of tiny channels peppered the surface of the shell, invisible to the naked eye but essential for life. These pores were precisely wide enough to allow oxygen to diffuse in and carbon dioxide to diffuse out, but small enough to prevent significant water loss and block the entry of microbes. The number and distribution of these pores could even be adapted to different environments, with eggs in humid climates having more pores than those in dry ones. The evolution of the shell marked the final step in perfecting the terrestrial egg. It was now a complete package, a climate-controlled, shock-proof, and armoured nursery. This innovation allowed for even greater parental freedom. Birds could leave their nests to forage, and reptiles could bury their eggs and leave them to incubate on their own, confident in their structural integrity. With this impregnable ark, the amniotes were fully equipped. The stage was set for them to not just survive on land, but to dominate it. Armed with the perfect terrestrial breeding system, the amniotes were poised for greatness. The world of the Permian period, beginning around 299 million years ago, became their grand stage. Two major lineages of amniotes diverged: the synapsids, the line that would eventually lead to mammals, and the sauropsids, the line that would lead to all reptiles and birds. Both groups wielded the power of the amniotic egg, and they used it to outcompete the amphibians, pushing them to the margins of the ecosystem. This was the true beginning of the age of reptiles. Freed from the water's edge, they exploded in a riot of evolutionary creativity. They were no longer just small, scurrying creatures. They diversified to fill nearly every available terrestrial niche. Large, herbivorous reptiles like the perilous developed barrel-chested bodies to house complex, digestive systems for processing tough plant matter. Swift, agile predators evolved to hunt them. This radiation of forms was a direct consequence of the egg. It allowed them to colonize vast inland territories, creating sprawling, complex ecosystems far from any significant body of water. They developed scaly, waterproof skin to further reduce their reliance on moisture, and their lungs became more efficient at extracting oxygen from the air. They were becoming masters of the dry world. The planet they inherited was harsh and demanding, culminating in the most severe extinction event in Earth's history at the end of the Permian period. The Great Dying wiped out an estimated 90% of all marine species and 70% of terrestrial vertebrate species. It was a global catastrophe that reshaped the tree of life. Yet, amidst the devastation, the reptiles endured. Their fundamental toughness, their efficient metabolisms, and crucially, their resilient, self-contained eggs proved to be winning survival traits. While many synapside lines were diminished, the sauropsids weathered the storm. In the aftermath of the extinction, they found a world emptied of competitors. They seized the opportunity with evolutionary vigor. From the hardy survivors of the Permian disaster would arise a new and spectacular dynasty. The amniotic egg had carried them through the planet's darkest hour, and now it would be the vessel from which the largest land animals in Earth's history would hatch. The age of dinosaurs was about to dawn. The legacy of the amniotic egg extends far beyond the age of reptiles. This ancient blueprint for life on land proved so adaptable that it became the inheritance for all dominant terrestrial vertebrates that followed. The two great lineages that survived the Permian-Triassic extinction, the reptiles and the mammals, each took this fundamental concept and refined it in their own unique ways. From the reptilian line, the dinosaurs rose to unimaginable size and diversity, and their eggs grew with them. They developed complex nesting behaviors, parental care, and a wide array of egg sizes and shapes. And when a cataclysm ended their reign, one group of dinosaurs survived: the birds. For birds, the hard-shelled amniotic egg is the absolute core of their existence. They perfected it, creating a lightweight, yet incredibly strong structure capable of withstanding the pressures of incubation and the demands of flight. Every bird in the sky today is a living testament to the enduring power of this 300-million-year-old invention. Meanwhile, the other great lineage, our own ancestors, the synapsids, embarked on a different path. They took the blueprint of the amniotic egg and internalized it. The earliest mammals, the monotremes like the platypus and echidna, still lay leathery-shelled eggs, a direct link to their distant reptilian cousins. But other mammal groups went a step further. They brought the entire ark inside the mother's body. The placenta, the defining feature of the most successful mammalian group, is a marvel of evolutionary modification. All the membranes of the amniotic egg are still there. The amnion still forms the protective, fluid-filled sac. The yolk sac still provides early nourishment. The allantois and chorion have fused and elaborated to become the placenta itself, a complex organ that handles nutrition, respiration, and waste removal by tapping directly into the mother's systems. The womb is the ultimate amniotic egg. It is a living, walking, climate-controlled ark that provides unparalleled protection and a constant supply of nourishment. From a simple set of membranes that allowed a tiny creature to lay its young on the forest floor, a direct line can be drawn to the birds that soar over the highest mountains and the mammals that have colonized every continent, even venturing back into the sea. It is the unbreakable ark, the biological innovation that carried the spark of vertebrate life out of the water and allowed it to fill the world. Every reptile, every bird, every mammal, including us, owes its existence to this revolution that began in a humble egg. For 150 million years, a dynasty of giants ruled the earth. Their dominion was absolute, their forms more varied and spectacular than any that had come before. This was the age of the dinosaurs, and their global success was built upon the foundation of the amniotic egg. By perfecting this portable ark, they unshackled themselves completely from the water's edge and conquered every continent. From the colossal sauropods, whose eggs were the size of soccer balls, to the nimble raptors that guarded their clutches with fierce intelligence, the egg was the engine of their reign. The sheer variety of their nesting strategies reveals a complex social fabric. Fossil evidence shows us vast nesting grounds, colonial sites where hundreds of Maiasaura, the good mother lizards, returned year after year to lay their eggs in carefully excavated earthen nests. This suggests communal behavior, a coordinated effort to protect the next generation. Other species, like the oviraptor, were once misunderstood as egg thieves, but are now known to have been dedicated parents, found fossilized while brooding their nests, shielding their future offspring with their own bodies. The dinosaur egg was a marvel of engineering. Its hard, calcified shell offered robust protection against the elements and most smaller predators. Inside, the nutrient-rich yolk was a supersized pantry, providing all the energy a developing dinosaur would need to grow from a tiny embryo into a self-sufficient hatchling. This strategy of producing large, well-provisioned eggs allowed for a rapid life cycle. A massive Argentinosaurus could hatch and reach maturity at a startling pace, a necessity in a world of giants. But this very strength, this reliance on an external, stationary cradle for their young, also contained a seed of vulnerability. For millions of years the world was stable and their strategy was unbeatable. But the Earth is not a static stage. The dynasty built on yolks had no idea that the sky was about to fall, and that their eggs, the very symbols of their dominance, would be exposed to a catastrophe they could not withstand. The cataclysm that ended the reign of the great dinosaurs was not a universal ending. For one small, resilient lineage, it was a profound opportunity. While the giants vanished, a group of feathered dinosaurs took to the skies carrying the legacy of the egg into a new world. These were the first birds, and their survival depended on refining and perfecting the ancient ark. The avian egg is a masterpiece of natural design, the culmination of millions of years of evolutionary fine-tuning. The shell became a fortress of calcium carbonate, strong enough to bear the weight of a brooding parent, yet porous enough to allow the embryo to breathe. The shape itself, from the perfect sphere to the pointed oval, was sculpted by necessity. The pointed eggs of cliff-nesting birds like the Murray prevent them from rolling away to destruction, a simple but ingenious solution to a perilous lifestyle. Inside this feathered ark, the life support system was perfected. The yolk remained the primary fuel source, while the albumen, or egg white, provided a protein-rich, watery cushion against physical shock and temperature fluctuations. But the true innovation of the birds was what they did after the egg was laid. They invented intensive parenting. Brooding, the act of incubating eggs with body heat, provided a stable, optimal temperature for development, a crucial advantage in the fluctuating climate of the post-dinosaur world. Nests evolved from simple scrapes in the ground to elaborate woven structures of breathtaking complexity. The weaver bird creates intricate hanging nests, the tailor bird stitches leaves together with plant fibre, and the hornbill seals the female inside a tree cavity to protect her and her eggs. Each nest is a bespoke incubator, a fortress designed to thwart predators and shelter the next generation. From the colossal eggs of the ostrich to the tiny, jewel-like eggs of the hummingbird, this single reproductive method has allowed birds to diversify into over 10,000 species, conquering every habitat on Earth, from the frozen Antarctic ice to the densest tropical jungles. They are the living dinosaurs, the keepers of the flame, and their feathered ark is a testament to the enduring power of the egg. While the dinosaurs dominated the daylight world, another group of animals was quietly carving out an existence in the shadows. They were small, furry, and secretive. They were the first mammals, and they walked a different evolutionary path. For millions of years, they scurried through the undergrowth of a world that belonged to giants, biding their time. And in their biology, they carried an echo of their own reptilian ancestry. They, too, laid eggs. This ancient trait was a direct link to the very first amniotes. But the mammalian egg was different. It lacked the hard, brittle shell of its dinosaur and bird cousins. Instead, it was soft and leathery, more like the eggs of modern lizards and turtles. This design required a different approach to parenting. The eggs could not simply be left in a nest exposed to the air. They would quickly dry out. They required moisture and warmth, which meant the mother had to remain in close contact, providing both from her own body. Today, this primordial reproductive strategy is carried on by only a handful of species, living relics from a bygone era known as the monotremes. The platypus of Australia digs deep burrows in riverbanks where it lays 1 to 3 small, leathery eggs. The mother curls around them, providing constant warmth and humidity until they hatch. The echidna, or spiny anteater, goes a step further. After laying a single egg, the female transfers it to a temporary pouch on her abdomen, a rudimentary incubator that allows her to carry her developing young with her. These creatures are a living window into the deep past, a glimpse of the mammalian form before a great evolutionary divergence. They demonstrate a critical transitional phase. They had fur, they produced milk, the defining traits of mammals, but they were still tethered to the external egg. Their strategy was successful enough to persist for over 150 million years, but it had its limits. The leathery egg was a compromise, an echo of the past that pointed toward a revolutionary future. A new question was being asked by evolution. What if the protection of the nest, the warmth of the mother's body, could be fully internalized? The greatest single innovation in the history of the mammals was not fur, nor warm blood, nor even milk. It was the decision to abandon the external egg altogether. It was the evolution of the womb. This was not a sudden invention, but a brilliant repurposing of the existing amniotic egg's components. The ancient life support system was not discarded. It was brought inside, transformed into a living, dynamic interface between mother and child. The result was the placenta, one of the most complex organs in the animal kingdom. The yolk sac, which had once been a simple food pouch, was integrated to become part of the umbilical cord and early circulatory system. The allantois, the membrane that handled waste in the egg, evolved into the cord's arteries, forming a direct line to the mother's filtration systems. And the chorion, the outer membrane, developed intricate, finger-like projections that embedded into the wall of the mother's uterus, creating a rich network for nutrient exchange. In essence, mammals had created a private, portable ocean for their young. The womb became the ultimate nest, a perfectly temperature-controlled, shock-absorbent, and predator-proof environment. The embryo floats in amniotic fluid, a saline solution that mirrors the composition of the primeval seas where life began. Nutrients, oxygen, and antibodies flow from mother to offspring, while waste products are efficiently removed. This internal gestation freed mammals from the constraints of a physical nest. A mother was no longer tied to a single, vulnerable location. She could roam, forage, and flee from danger, all while carrying her developing young safely within her. This mobility conferred a tremendous adaptive advantage, allowing mammals to exploit new environments and survive in a changing world. It enabled the development of larger brains as the extended, stable gestation period provided the time and resources needed for complex neural structures to form. The womb was more than a biological adaptation. It was the crucible in which the defining traits of modern mammals, intelligence, social complexity, and parental care, were forged. The age of the external arc was being challenged by a new, internal world. Following the Great Extinction, two winning blueprints for terrestrial life emerged, each built around a profoundly different approach to reproduction. On one side, the birds, perfecting the external egg. On the other, the mammals, pioneering the internal womb. This divergence created a tale of two strategies, a fundamental choice that has shaped the animal kingdom for the last 66 million years. The avian strategy is one of externalizing the cost. By laying a clutch of eggs, the female bird offloads the physical burden of development early. This allows her to remain agile and lightweight for flight and foraging. It also enables the production of a larger number of potential offspring in a single season. The parents can share incubation duties, a division of labor that increases the chances of success. However, this strategy comes with immense risk. The nest is a stationary target, vulnerable to predators, parasites, and environmental calamities. A single storm or a clever snake can wipe out an entire generation's chances. the fate of the young is precariously balanced in a fragile cradle. The mammalian strategy, championed by the placentals, is one of internalization. Live birth offers unparalleled protection. The embryo develops in a secure, mobile fortress, shielded from the outside world and sustained by a constant supply of nutrients. This results in offspring that are often more developed at birth, giving them a head start in the race for survival. But this security comes at a tremendous energetic cost to the mother. She alone bears the weight and metabolic drain of pregnancy, making her more vulnerable. The number of offspring is typically far smaller, representing a massive investment in each individual. Neither strategy is inherently superior. Their success is written across every landscape on the planet. The skies are filled with the descendants of the feathered ark, while the land and seas teem with the products of the womb. From the emperor penguin incubating a single egg through the Antarctic winter to the blue whale nurturing a single calf in the vastness of the ocean, both paths have led to extraordinary evolutionary triumphs. It is a grand testament to life's ingenuity that two such different answers to the same fundamental problem, how to protect the next generation, could both be so profoundly successful. Life on Earth is a story of conquest, of pushing into frontiers that seem impossibly hostile. From the scorching, waterless heart of the desert to the frozen expanse of the polar caps, vertebrates have established their reign. But this global dominion would have been impossible without their portable, self-contained life support system, the amniotic egg. It is the key that unlocked the planet's most extreme lockers. In the arid wilderness, water is the currency of life, and the egg is a vault. For a reptile like the desert tortoise, laying its eggs in the sun-baked sand is an act of supreme trust in this ancient design. The tough, leathery shell is a miracle of engineering, porous enough to allow the embryo to breathe, but impermeable enough to prevent lethal dehydration. Within this fortress, the yolk provides every nutrient the developing creature will need, a complete pantry in a world where food is scarce. The parent can bury the clutch and leave, confident that the egg itself will manage the harsh realities of the environment. Contrast this with the opposite extreme, the Antarctic. Here, the challenge is not heat, but its utter absence. For the emperor penguin, the egg is a vessel that must withstand temperatures that would freeze unprotected tissue in moments. The shell is thicker, a robust barrier against the cold. The parents do not leave this precious cargo to the mercy of the elements. Instead, they engage in one of nature's most extraordinary acts of endurance. The male penguin will balance the single egg on his feet, protecting it with a warm fold of feathered skin for 2 months of the brutal polar winter without eating. He becomes a living incubator, a furnace for the next generation. This level of investment is a world away from the tortoise's strategy, yet both are enabled by the same fundamental invention. Even in the thin air of the high mountains, the egg adapts. The bar-headed goose, which nests at altitudes where oxygen is dangerously low, lays eggs with shells that have greater porosity, allowing the embryo inside to capture more of the scarce oxygen molecules. From the driest sands to the highest peaks and the coldest ice, the amniotic egg is not a passive container. It is an active, adaptable ark, fine-tuned by millions of years of evolution to give the life within the best possible chance of survival, no matter the odds. It is a private ocean, a personal larder, and a breathable fortress, all in one. Once the egg is laid, a new chapter begins. The journey from a single cell to a fully formed creature requires one critical ingredient: warmth. The strategies that have evolved to provide this warmth are a testament to nature's boundless creativity. They range from apparent neglect to the most intricate and devoted forms of care. At one end of the spectrum is the ancient reptilian approach. A sea turtle labors ashore, digs a chamber in the sand, deposits her eggs, and returns to the sea, never to see her offspring. She outsources the job of incubation to the sun. It is a game of numbers. She lays many eggs in the hope that a few will survive the odds. Crocodilians take this a step further. The mother builds a nest of rotting vegetation which generates heat as it decomposes, creating a natural incubator. She then stands guard with fierce devotion, protecting her clutch from any who would venture too close. But the true masters of incubation are the birds. With the evolution of warm-bloodedness, they no longer had to rely on the environment for heat. They became their own furnaces. This ability transformed parental care, leading to direct contact incubation. A bird preparing to nest develops a brood patch, a bare area on its underside, rich with blood vessels. This patch becomes a perfect heat transfer device, allowing the parent to press its body warmth directly against the shells. To hold these eggs, birds became architects, engineering nests of astonishing variety. The simple scrape in the ground, made by an ostrich, is a minimalist solution for a giant egg. At the other extreme, the tiny weaver bird uses its beak and feet to tie intricate knots, weaving a complex, hanging sphere from grass and plant fibers. Swallows build sturdy cups from hundreds of pellets of mud. Grebes construct floating platforms of aquatic weeds. Each nest is a bespoke solution designed to regulate temperature, provide drainage, and offer concealment. Some species have even evolved to avoid incubation altogether. The Australian brush turkey builds a colossal mound of earth and leaves, sometimes weighing several tons. The male meticulously manages this compost heap, constantly checking the temperature with his beak and adding or removing material to keep it at the precise temperature required for development. It is a remarkable feat of natural engineering, a slow-release oven built by a bird. From the sun-warmed sand to the compost-powered mound to the feathered warmth of a parent's body, the business of hatching is a high-stakes endeavor, demanding ingenuity and sacrifice. For all its structural perfection, the egg has a fundamental vulnerability. It is stationary. It cannot run, it cannot hide, and it cannot fight back. For a predator, an egg is the perfect meal, a stationary, nutrient-rich package with no defenses of its own. This simple fact has ignited one of the most intense and enduring arms races in the natural world, the battle between the egg layers and the egg eaters. The cast of characters who seek out this prize is long and varied. Snakes are perhaps the most notorious, their flexible jaws allowing them to swallow eggs whole. Mammals, from the clever raccoon with its dexterous paws to the powerful badger, are masters of raiding nests on or near the ground. Even other birds have entered the fray. Crows, jays, and magpies are incredibly intelligent observers, capable of watching a parent bird build a nest and returning later to claim its contents. In response to this relentless pressure, egg layers have evolved a stunning array of defensive strategies. The first line of defense is concealment. Camouflage is a widespread tactic. The eggs of ground-nesting birds like the plover are masterpieces of disguise, their shells covered in spots and speckles that perfectly mimic the pebbles and soil around them, rendering them nearly invisible. The second strategy is to make the nest inaccessible. Seabirds like the guillemot lay their single egg on perilous, narrow cliff ledges. To counter the risk of falling, their eggs have evolved a unique pear shape. If knocked, they do not roll away, but pivot in a tight circle. Other birds choose to nest in deep tree hollows or burrows dug into the earth, placing a physical barrier between their clutch and the outside world. When concealment fails, the only option left is active defense. Many smaller birds engage in mobbing, where the entire community will band together to harass and drive away a much larger predator. And few things in nature are more formidable than a protective parent. An ostrich can fend off a jackal with a single powerful kick, while an eagle will fearlessly defend its eyrie from any intruder. This evolutionary tug-of-war is a powerful engine of change. As parents develop better camouflage, predators evolve sharper eyes. As nests are built in more secure locations, hunters develop better climbing or digging skills. The color, shape, and placement of almost every egg in the world is a direct result of this ongoing conflict. It is a silent, desperate war waged across every ecosystem on the planet, a constant struggle for the future of the next generation. Long before science could explain its biological mechanisms, humanity recognized the egg as something profound. In its smooth, perfect form, it held a visible secret, the promise of life. It was a tangible piece of magic, a mundane object that could produce a living, breathing creature. This inherent mystery captured the human imagination, transforming the egg from a mere food source into a powerful, universal symbol of creation, rebirth, and the cosmos itself. Across ancient cultures, a fascinating and persistent idea emerged: the cosmic egg. In Hindu scripture, the universe begins as Hiranyagarbha, a golden egg floating in the void from which all of creation emerges. Ancient Greek Orphic traditions told of a silver egg laid by the night, which split to form the heavens and the earth. From Finland to China, this concept of a primordial egg represented the ultimate beginning, a point of perfect potential from which the complexities of the world would hatch. As societies developed, this grand cosmic symbolism trickled down into personal rituals and art. The tradition of decorating eggs to celebrate the arrival of spring is found in countless cultures. It is a direct link to the egg's power as a symbol of renewal and fertility, marking the end of winter's slumber and the rebirth of life. This tradition reached its zenith in the opulent workshops of Imperial Russia. The Fabergé eggs crafted for the Tsars were not mere decorations, they were breathtaking works of art made from gold, platinum, and precious gems. Each one was a unique marvel of engineering that, true to its inspiration, held a surprise within. The egg was elevated from a symbol of life to an object of ultimate luxury and desire. Yet the egg also fueled the human intellect. It posed one of philosophy's most famous paradoxes: which came first, the chicken or the egg? This seemingly simple question is a complex riddle about origins and causality that has puzzled thinkers for centuries. In the early days of science, the egg was a black box that spurred investigation. It was the centerpiece of the theory of ovism, the belief that every future generation was contained in miniature inside the eggs of its ancestors. While incorrect, these ideas demonstrate how the egg forced us to contemplate the very mechanics of life and inheritance. From the origin of the universe to the most exquisite human creations, the egg's simple form has been a canvas for our greatest ideas about where we come from and the regenerative power of life. In our modern age, we look for ways to preserve what is precious in a rapidly changing world. We build vaults for seeds and create frozen zoos to safeguard genetic material. In doing so, we are echoing a strategy that nature perfected hundreds of millions of years ago. We are building arks. But nature's original ark was not made of wood or steel. It was the egg, and its true cargo is not the creature itself, but the information required to build it. The ultimate triumph of the egg is its role as a genetic time capsule. Sealed within the shell is a complete blueprint for life, a sequence of DNA passed down through an unbroken chain of ancestors. This intricate code, refined by eons of trial and error, is the egg's most precious content. It is a legacy of survival, a detailed manual on how to build a body perfectly suited to its world. This ancient function has found a new purpose in our hands. Modern conservation efforts for critically endangered birds, such as the California condor, are fundamentally dependent on the egg. Specialists carefully monitor captive breeding programs, incubating eggs in controlled environments to maximize the chances of hatching, giving the species a desperately needed foothold back from the brink. The concept extends into the future with so-called frozen arks, where egg and sperm cells are cryogenically preserved. This genetic library is a safeguard against oblivion, a repository of biodiversity for future generations. It even fuels speculation about de-extinction, the audacious idea of reviving extinct species. Scientists theorize that the egg of a living relative, like an ostrich or emu, could one day serve as the incubator for the DNA of a long-lost creature. Yet, even this masterful design faces new, human-made challenges. For sea turtles, where the temperature of the sand determines the sex of the hatchling, a warming planet threatens to disrupt the balance, creating populations with too few males to sustain themselves. Chemical pollutants, which can accumulate in the food chain, can lead to thin, fragile eggshells that break before the chick is ready, a problem that famously devastated populations of eagles and falcons in the 20th century. The story of the amniotic egg is a story of a single, brilliant innovation that changed the course of life on Earth. It allowed vertebrates to break their final tie to the water and conquer the land. It is a perfect marriage of form and function, a vessel of hope that has carried the blueprint of life through mass extinctions and ice ages. It is nature's promise of renewal, a bridge from the past to the future. It is, and always will be, life's unbreakable ark.